has science in it, that most people, most leading-edge scientists will say, what's so new about this? And why it's important for me to make this point is that, yes, leading-edge scientists know the stuff that I'm talking about in the book, but the public has no concept of the stuff I'm talking about in the book, and that's where the disconnect comes from. People are operating according to beliefs that current science finds to be totally untrue, and as a result, the current population is misleading itself, thinking that it's doing perhaps the right things, when science has revealed that the things we're doing are actually very self-destructive. So the effort of the book, and the effort, I hope, of some of the conversation that we have, is basically to get to the lay audience, the mass public, not the scientists. Most of them know what I'm talking about. It's the public, and the public has been, I guess, they've been given a science that's like a brief context of this is what science is about in school, because you only have so much time, so you can't learn everything about everything. So you get a summary. Unfortunately, I think the summary that people have received about science has misled them in beliefs about who they are and how they operate and what's going on in this planet, because we're still operating from false ideas, like our lives are in some way controlled by our genes, for example.
Yeah.
This is a general consensus because this is what schools essentially teach in their abbreviated courses. Genes control life. So, scientists at the leading edge say, well, this is not true. Well, that's great, except scientists constitute some little tiny, minuscule percent of the population. The rest of the global population is operating from beliefs that are outdated and are actually very destructive, and that's why our world is moving toward this destruction, because the people aren't aware of the new science.
So this is, in a way, a combined effort. I mean, in schools we are being handed down information that isn't, it's not going deep enough, but yet that is, one problem in the entire aspect too, to try to educate people, but not, efficiently, or not information that is being applied within, something that we actually can learn from,
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to go in a classroom and in like 5 minutes say, oh, there are these things called genes, and genes are involved with programming the traits of living organism, and therefore genes control traits. And we walk away and people say, yeah, I understood that. And yet the reality is genes don't really control traits. They're associated with the traits, but the control is not in the genes. And there are several reasons, as I said, why this information is coming out. One is it takes a bit more time to explain. It's easier to give a capsule summary to a child. Genes control life, and let's go on to the next subject. Than it is to fully explain the mechanism. And then I have to tell you, there is really a second side to this. It's unfortunate because there are corporations, so to speak, that are actually not interested in the new science reaching the public. And the reason is that these corporations depend on the beliefs that people hold now, that if people change their beliefs, these corporations lose their power. And the primary corporations I'm talking about are the pharmaceutical industries.
Of course.
Because their belief system is they want us to believe that we are like biochemical robots, and that if something is not working in our lives, then we must attribute the problem to something wrong with the biochemistry, and therefore if we make drugs, which are a form of biochemistry, then we can fix your problems by fixing your mechanical machine. That's the belief that we're told. That's why all the drugs are on the market, is rather than people being told, how about healing yourself? They say, no, you're a machine. You really have no control over this, so just take these drugs. And the reality is, this is totally incorrect. And yet the problem is, when we understand the nature that biology is actually based on belief, then if you buy a belief that is limiting or self-sabotaging belief, but you buy that as a truth, then that's actually what you operate by. And that's an unfortunate situation, because if we buy the belief that we are victims and are frail and vulnerable, if we buy that as a belief, then that's what we become. And
exactly.
why I get excited by the new biology is, no, you have to know who you are so you can rewrite the beliefs that limit us and limit our evolution of peace and global unity on this planet. We have to change the belief systems. And science, as I said, has already changed the belief systems, except the public is not getting that information.
So it's a kind of a combined thing. There is an interest also here, I guess, to actually keep people in this state or educate people in this way so they actually don't break out of this mold, right?
This is absolutely true. There was a recent film by Michael Moore called Sicko, which is about the United States health industry and the business that it is and all that. But what was very interesting is that he had a video interview with a man called Tony Benn, who was a member of British Parliament. And Tony Benn just clearly came right out and said that the only way you can control a population is that you keep them unhealthy and you limit their intelligence. Because he said a smart, healthy population is not easy to govern, but a weak, unhealthy and population that is unaware is very easy to control. So there are interesting situations, even as these government officials like Tony Benn point out, that it's not in the interest for the people that manage or control life to have us as the citizens become more aware and become more healthy, because then we are less controllable.
Exactly, and it's not easy to be in a position that we are in now then, because people are from day one basically, being taught into this system, and in many cases I guess it's not our fault. In a way it is, because we are conscious and we are aware and we can break free and out of that at any time, but if we are not handed down the processes of how to think freely, we're likely that we're not going to be able to do it, right?
Right, and the problem with the word fault, this is a problem because this is where some of the issues come in, because people all of a sudden say, I'm not responsible for the problems in my life, because this is the way they were programmed, that things happen to them so that they're just like victims. And the idea is, we can't say that this person is at fault for this reason. They've never been given the proper education to operate from. So if we're ignorant of the truth, then we can't be guilty because we didn't know what the truth was.
Yeah.
But now that this new science is available, then here's the whole idea. We educate the population about how truly powerful we are and tell them the nature of how we lost this power through programming by other people. And once we understand this, then we have access to say, well, then how can I change my belief systems? And that's what we have to do, to acquire the powers that we have. And you say, well, what kind of powers do we have? And it's fun. It's, for example, people are very familiar with the fact that other people walk across hot coals, even, flaming hot coals.
Sure.
And you say, how, what are these special people? And the answer is, they're no special people. They're just like every other person on this planet. So you say, well, how come they can walk across the hot coals and the average person will do the same thing, will get burned? And the only difference, it's not biology, it's all based on belief. The belief of the person that's walking across the hot coals is unshakable. They know they can walk across it. But if you walk across the hot coals and then question, I wonder if I'll get burned, the moment you question is the moment you get burned. So it's interesting. It's like, it's all a matter of belief. Or here's one, a lot of articles. I got this from a lot of newspaper collections. So because it happens a lot. Let's say there's a car accident, and a child gets pinned under the car. That a mother can actually lift up the car and get the child out. Now, this is not just one incident. This is reported all over the world. And then all of a sudden you say, well, that's interesting. And I say, no, interesting. I go, here's a woman who's totally untrained, physically not an athlete or anything, lifting over 1,000 pounds, where the most trained weightlifters in this world lift about 700 pounds for a world title. Here's an untrained woman lifting 1,000 pounds. And then people say, oh, well, that's because of the adrenaline. And then I laugh and I say, I don't care what the reason is. The concept is this, that a woman who's totally untrained can lift over 1,000 pounds. And they say, but she wasn't genetically different than anybody else. She's just like any other woman on this planet.